that's the catch. You got to use it all over the place here. Okay, add source. Hang on. Facebook, I don't know, is ever coming back. Facebook, we used to stream this to Facebook. Facebook has changed their API, their connecting thing, and it's not just my program. Podbean, where we store these, can't connect to it. All these other programs I use, everybody suddenly says there's Facebook is, I don't know what their thinking was, but they've changed their algorithm, and all the programs that used to connect to them don't connect to them anymore.
Uh, I have to figure it out on my side. I haven't looked at it yet.
I mean, you
But
can
we're
still
on
do it
YouTube Live.
directly, but it's a pain in the butt. You got to go through all these steps. It's not a quick process to set up a direct Facebook feed through their site. But all I used, everybody else wants to go through some other software here, like this. So,
Right.
anyway, they're going through some sort of upheaval there. All right, what am I trying to do here? I'm trying to get a camera capture here.
We'll send you a YouTube link of the interview, Cedric.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's going on YouTube Live and a bunch of different podcast areas.
Oh man, I have a face for radio, so I don't know about this YouTube. I don't know about this YouTube.
We'll black you. We'll gray it out like you're in a witness protection program.
Okay.
We'll alter your voice a little bit here. Let's see here. Hang on. Let me just get this all finished and ready to go. Okay, so I got that. Let's go back to this and get the title and information, and then we'll launch here. Okay, YouTube.
What is fireflies.ai?
That's a robot he hires to transcribe these shows.
Dr. Trinh, that's that?
That's
so that you don't have to take notes, it just transcribes it.
Oh, okay.
And you get an email, I think, with the transcription. Like if you want to read over like what we talked about, right, you don't have to like take notes or anything. It just automatically transcribes our conversation.
But you have to let it in like it's a guest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Give me your correct name here so I can get it right. Cedric.
Cedric.
Yeah.
Last name Holloman. Holloman.
Holloman. Okay. And what are we talking about? What's the topic? Dr. Trinh never tells me.
It's whatever Cedric wants to talk about.
Okay.
So what do we make the topic? Or do we put a company or something here, Cedric Holloman?
The need for long-term care.
Okay. Long-term care. That is the truth, boy. All right. Okay. Today we talk with Cedric.
Oh, how long is the show, by the way?
About 45 minutes here.
Okay.
How to get it. All right, I'm ready if you guys are here. Let's launch here. Everybody stay quiet. Here we go. Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Health Talks with Dr. Trinh. The one show, maybe the only show that shows you the path to a healthier life, one conversation at a time. And today we're going to take a long-term view. We're going to look at long-term care. Is that right, Dr. Trinh?
Absolutely. And welcome to another Thursday. I have a friend and a guest here, Cedric Holloman, who is here to discuss a very important topic that is never discussed until it's too late.
Yeah.
And that's the topic of long-term care. I know for a fact as a physician, having seen many patients go through this, that at some point, they're in their 70s, they're in their 80s, and voila, they realize they can't live at home any longer due to their health conditions. And the family all of a sudden struggles to find out what's next. How do we pay for long-term care? What are the options of it? What are the nursing homes around and assisted livings and all that stuff? And it's usually a conversation that's decided way too late.
Yes.
Whereas that's why we're bringing this conversation now, actually, for folks to think about long-term care, and how to obtain long-term care and exactly what it is. That it's not on many people's radar until it's too late. So
So
welcome,
welcome,
Cedric.
welcome your guest. Welcome your guest, and we'll let him introduce himself here. Welcome, Cedric.
Good morning, everyone, or good day. I'm Cedric Holloman. I'm a longtime insurance agent here in California. And lately, I've been forced into learning and specializing in long-term care. We can talk about that story if you guys like to.
Oh yeah, please. Let's
How that happened.
launch into it. What brought you into the long? You're a long-time agent who ignored long-term care for a long time. It sounds like here.
Well, I did a little bit of it earlier in my career, but I didn't do a lot of it because there's not a lot of people that are interested in it, like Dr. Trinh mentioned, until it's kind of too late.
Yeah.
The opportune time to actually purchase it is in your 50s. That's about what I call an inflection point where people are old enough to have dealt with parents who have gotten older and they've had to deal with their aging situation. And they're not too old where it's not that expensive yet, because it is expensive. And if you wait too long, you could price yourself out of the market because it'll be more than you can afford. So
was there a story was there an epiphany? Is there an aha moment in your life? You said, aha, I got to look.
Well, I had to deal with my own mother who lived into her 90s, and she eventually got dementia, and we had to put her into a nursing home. So my sister and I had to go through all the machinations of that process. And thank goodness we found an attorney who could help us, because he'd gone through the same thing with his mother. First, he brought her into his home to try to take care of her himself. And then he eventually had to put her into a nursing home. And all the emotional turmoil that you go through when you're trying to deal with a parent who's in that situation, and how you're going to handle it, and how you're going to actually transition them from living by themselves or living with you into a situation where they have to be taken care of in a professional facility. So we had to go through this with my mom, so she lived into her 90s. She was very vibrant, but eventually, like they say in the NBA, father time is undefeated. So
Yeah.
sooner or later you have to deal with these things, right? And we had to deal with getting her into a place and figuring out how to pay for it. And that's
So let me share my experience. We've shared them before, but I'll try and summarize them real quickly here, because you had me at hello, as they say. I'm converted. I got converted the hard way here. I'm an only child. I took care of my late mother, and then her sister, who never got married, and then my father. So I had three of them in a row here. And in two of the three cases, I always say, this is going to sound horrible, lucky me and lucky them, they died before we had to do this. And I really do say that because I don't know how we would have paid for it. They didn't want to do it. I felt traumatized. They felt traumatized. And it was so expensive. We were all shocked. So they were all coming to that point. Couldn't live at home. Couldn't get taken care of. Falling all the time. Frightened. Doctor saying you got to do something. And in my mom's case, she had Parkinson's. She died. In my dad's case, he fell and hit his head and got a brain, swelling of the brain and everything here, and died. He'd been through stroke. He'd been through heart attacks. He'd been through cancer. None of it touched him. It was falling and hitting his head, as he'd been falling a lot, and he in his 90s here, living at home. So all of those, I got kind of spared the trauma, the drama, the expense of doing it. But in my aunt's case, the last of the Mohicans that went, She was very independent, lived alone, had no house, had no nothing, just a little secretary living off of a couple $1,000s a month, a little apartment out in Palm Springs. And it got worse and worse and worse. And the doctor would take me aside and say, "You got to do something." And I'd say, "What?" She
Mhm.
doesn't have the money,
Right.
nor does she want to go. You can't even open that conversation about her. So take her home. And my wife would say, "Well, who gets to stay home with her? One of us got to quit her job, and she can't go up and down a 2-story house. So I guess we're going to make the dining room her room." And all these horrible things we're going through. So finally, here's what happened. She fell for the 87th time and went into the went into the hospital, and they put her into rehab for the 30 days until they kick her out. And at that time, they literally took me aside and said, "If you don't do something, we're calling social services, and we're going to literally take this lady and put her somewhere." I said, so I go to my aunt. She said, "Okay, let's go home." I said, "You're not going home."
Mhm.
And my sweet little aunt, who I never heard say a crossword about anybody, cussed me out like I've never heard a sailor talk. She
Mhm.
used every 4-letter word, "you traitor, you rotten nephew, you everything else." I mean, she just went after me. And all I could find in this 30-day interim, when I knew we had to do something, she couldn't afford a full-blown nursing care. She couldn't live in assisted living because she couldn't go down to the uh, she couldn't assist herself to go down to the dining room and stuff, so she needed some sort of more care. And we're looking at minimum 5, 6, 7,000 a month, up to like 10 grand a month. Some of these places out in the valley. She
Mhm.
didn't qualify for any sort of assistance because she had like 20,000 in the bank or 10,000 in the bank, and you had to be down to like two, and you couldn't just take the money and drain it artificially and say, "Here, give it to charity or give it to somebody." No, you can't play that trick. So even though she didn't have much money, she didn't have enough to qualify. And even had she, there was no facility in the entire Coachella Valley that would take Medicare, whatever they call it, Medicaid reimbursement. That's not enough money. They don't build facilities. We'd have to take her to Bakersfield or Victorville or someplace else to find a place that would even take it if we could get her to qualify. So I went through this horror story over this last year, and we finally found what I thought was the only answer. And we can talk about it. Is these board and care facilities where somebody takes a house in a regular neighborhood, puts 4 or 5 patients in it, and that was about 3 grand a month. So I only had to come out of pocket a little bit. She had about $2,500 a month, and we did it. But the minute I put her there, she was so depressed she died within 6 months. Very vibrant. So it was a horrible thing from start to finish, and the most horrible part was the cost and the shock that nobody would pay for this thing. I assumed, she assumed, everybody assumed there was money floating around should she need it someday. And the second shock was how the doctors, sorry, Dr. Trinh, didn't give us any avenue other than they'd say, "You better do something," and then they'd leave. And I'd
Mhm.
talk to their nurse, I'd talk to people, and everybody just shrug and say, "Well, she's got a house, doesn't she? Sell the house. She's got a bunch of money in the 401k." I said, "No, didn't have any of this." So
Mhm.
walk through some of that stuff here. This shock that there isn't any support system when you get older, like many think there is, and the shock of the cost of this care, which is this was 5 years ago. It's probably gone up since then. Tell me about those two. The shock of that there's nobody there, and the shock of what it costs when you find out of your pocket you got to pay for this.
Yeah, well, that's why we're having a show like this to try to
Ah,
get people ahead of the curve.
ah,
You
please.
know, we're trying to get them to look. You let them know there's a sense of urgency here that they don't realize is going on. You know, it's like being in a house that's on fire and you can't smell the smoke at all. You know,
No,
you don't smell, but the house is on fire. You just don't know it. And
right.
the fire is you're getting older and older every day, and you're eventually going to decline, and you eventually might need some help. And the social system around us is not built to handle this situation. And unfortunately, you would think the government would change some of the laws of the legislation, but they're too busy arguing with each other about insignificant things to do
Yeah,
things that we really need help with. Because
right.
this Medicare spin down that you're talking about, you can't have over $2,000 in assets to get any Medicare help or whatever. So
And even if you
people don't
do,
realize that.
there's nobody to take it. I started doing some shows during this last couple of years of her decline, where I would bring people in from assisted living facilities and other things, and we would just talk about it as kind of on the station here. And part of it was to educate me. I took one of these guys that owned a bunch of these things aside. He owned a bunch of assisted living facilities at what we used to call nursing homes or long-term care or whatever. And I said, tell me the truth. I said, here's the situation I got. He looked at me and he said, you're screwed. I mean, he said it that plainly. And I
Mm.
said, what do you mean? He said, none of us want your aunt. We're all going after the top 10% that has a big fat house and has a big 401k or has rich kids. That's what the whole system is set. It's wonderful for them. We'll give you these, resort-like settings and everything else. Or your mother, when your mother died of Parkinson's, yeah, you can put them in some place, but it's 10 grand a month starting. And every time they touch them, it's, oh, they're going to have to take them to the bathroom. You have to do their pills and everything. Everything else is a plus, plus, plus service. He said, that's the way the whole system, it's a capitalist system. And he said, and it's not just because we're greedy, it's because the cost of land is so high in Southern California. We can't make money. We can't buy the land cheap enough, and the labor's gone up, and the land's gone up, and the regulations have gone up. We can't make money serving any but the top 10%. So, everybody else is going to be in for a real shock when mom or dad or you needs help. Somebody's going to have to quit their job and take them into their house, and that's not a good solution for most of us.
No, it's not a good solution. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Trinh wants to jump in with some insight that he's seen in some of this, but
What
yeah, each facility only has so many Medicare beds assigned to it that they set aside for this. So if you have a facility with 200 rooms, maybe only 10 or 15 or 20 of them even will accept a patient that's
Right,
going to be using that room. So you're limited with that anyway. And then we're in the worst state in the union as far as cost.
right.
And I talked to a doctor once, and he's I was talking about I have relatives in Texas, and he said, yeah, well, maybe you should go to Texas because they're willing to take care of older people there. In California, they don't want to do it, I was kind of shocked that he would say something like that. We're one of the richest states in the union, yet we
Yes.
have the highest cost for long-term care. It might be almost half as much in other states as it is here.
My aunt was originally from Minnesota. That's where she spent most of her life. She came out here to be with my mother, her sister, in her declining years, to help take care of her. And then it fell to me to help take care of her because I'm the only living relative. I had a few cousins back in Minnesota, and they had a brother who had a couple kids and back there who died a long time ago. And we seriously looked at shipping her back to Minnesota because it was half the price
Right.
or less. She could live on 3,000. She could get a decent place for 3,000 a month. We couldn't get her a place other than this board and care option, which only came about through a lot of effort on my part. A typical walk through the different stages too, Dr. Trinh. I don't think they just think there's nursing homes. There really aren't any nursing homes where they nurse you along. There's long-term care, the kind of us where you go after the hospital, they give you 30 days or something to do it. Some of those turn them into permanent long care facilities, but most of them it's kind of assisted living and then long-term care. Talk about those different
that's right.
stages.
There's this boarding care where
Right,
you're independent. There's assisted living where there's a nurse there uh, required, and PT, OT,
right.
physical therapy, things of that sort.
But you still have to do something. You have to get yourself up in the morning. You got to go to the
Yep.
bathroom. You got to get yourself down to
Yep.
the dining room. Right.
Of course, nursing home care is like 24/7 with that. But what I want to learn is what is long-term care insurance?
Yes.
Okay.
And what
Um,
does it cover and what does it cost? If my aunt had been smart enough, we've been smart enough to, invest in this, what kind of cost are we looking at? And does it pay? What does it pay? Does it pay the whole bill or just part of the bill?
well, you get to determine that by what kind of policy you buy, because the policies are priced on how much they pay out a month.
Mhm.
So, for instance, the average cost in California is like $9,000 a month for one of these facilities.
Say that again. The average cost, folks, for your mom or dad or for you is 8, 9, maybe 10,000 a month. You're
Per
not getting
month.
you're not getting Cadillac service, as they used to say when I was a kid. This isn't top tier stuff. This is just kind of your average place. You can go up on that price if you
But
want.
that's for semi-private rooms. That's what means you're sharing a room with someone else.
Yeah.
And that's what it costs, right? So that's the amount of money that once the policy triggers, this is what you're eligible to pay for on a monthly basis. So, and it'll pay for that. It also pay for if you're at home. For instance, you just need assistance at home. You need someone to come in, help you with your meal preparation, help you with going to the restroom, help you with transferring in and out of the bed or whatever,
Right.
taking your medication. You can stay home. Most people would prefer to stay home, but they need someone else, right, to come in and help them. So that might cost you $30,000 a month. You're talking about a person, this is their job. They go from house to house and they help, elderly people through the day, basically.
And I have somebody who was a show host here. He's fortunate his father had millions of dollars, and they burned through. God, I never heard, but it had to be a couple $1,000,000 in doing that because the dad needed round the clock care, and they said, well, Dad can afford it, and they're paying what $20,000-$30,000 a month for round the clock care, and within a couple years, we had another show host who came on and said, not a show host, a show guest years ago. I'll never forget that. I don't remember the guy's name, but he said, my dad had figured it all out, didn't have long term care, but had money, had saved, scrimped, had a house, had millions of dollars in the bank. And dad got ill and got dementia or something like that. So he said, I went out, started tapping into this stuff. He said, we burned through all of it and then some. And that's when it came to him, and he had to quit his job because they couldn't keep him in the facility, so he had to go out and take care of him himself. And he lost income, and they're still spending money to do this. It can drain the family's income, even on an affluent family, rather quickly, because you don't die in a year or two. Used to, Dr. Trinh, what was the average when you went into a nursing home? It was 2-3 years you were gone. Now you can stay there 10, 12 years. The miracles of modern medicine here. Yeah.
Yeah. So describe long-term care insurance for us, Cedric.
Okay, so let's talk about basic long-term care. It's a health insurance policy. You kind of can rename it a long-term disability, right? If you want to give it a different name that might make more sense to the common person. So it's triggered by you not being able to do two of the activities of daily living. They call them ADLs for at least 90 days. So that's the trigger.
And what are those? Let's list because I don't think people even are aware. I had to learn those 5 ADLs.
There's six ADLs plus, and the plus is the one that Dr. Trinh works in. That's with Alzheimer's or dementia or some sort of mental deficiency, right? That's one. That's set that one aside. The others are you need help dressing. You can't put your clothes on by yourself, right? Because you're incapacitated in some way. You can't transfer. I mean, you can't get in and out of the bed, in and out of the car, in and out of the restroom, whatever. You can't go to the restroom by yourself without someone helping you. You're incontinent. Let's say the plumbing doesn't work anymore.
Right.
You can't bathe yourself. Someone else has to come in and help bathe you. Or you can't feed yourself. So that's the 6 ADLs. We call these activities of daily living that most of us take for granted, that we do every day. What happens if you have some sickness, some illness, some accident? Now you can't do all of that alone. You need some help. So, and you don't have, it's not all 6, it's just 2. And they want to know you have 90 days worth of time that you've been in this situation. So that's the trigger. So all long-term care policies, that's what they're based on. So that means you have to get a doctor to agree when you want to file a claim, say, hey, this is the situation this person is in. You file that claim, they're going to check with the doctor. Is this person really in this situation? They say, yes. Now you can start getting assistance with your policies as far as the payout is concerned. And so that means you do still need enough money to tide yourself over until the policy starts to pay. But it is a health insurance policy.
And does the policy pay forever, or does it have a lifetime cap? Does it only pay up to a certain amount?
No, it doesn't pay forever. It all depends on how you structure it. So this is long-term care can be structured all kind of different ways. So the first thing is, well, how long before, what's the elimination period? Do I want to be able to get my money in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, right? So the shorter the elimination period, the higher the price. Then how much is it going to pay per month? Of course, the higher the payout, the bigger the premium, right? How long is it going to pay? Is it going to pay for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or for a lifetime? There's policies you could buy that'll pay out as long as you live. But of course, That's the top of the food chain. Now you have to pay a lot more premium for that. So those are all the different ways and nuances. Now let me drop the bomb now on this as far as that's
Okay,
concerned.
yeah.
Here's the bomb.
Get ready,
Long-term
folks.
care.
Hold on to your computers there.
Yeah, here's the bomb. The premium that you pay today, you probably won't be paying tomorrow, because long-term care policies can be increased in cost over time. And now they can't just increase your cost willy-nilly. They have to get approval from the state insurance department. So they might apply for a 7% increase, and the state might only say, no, we'll give you a 2 or 3% increase. But they can get an increase. And so they're going to look at their costs that they've been paying out for existing policyholders, and they're going to look at the pool of money that they've been collecting, and they're going to go to the state and say, hey, look, we're getting to an inflection point with our costs here. We need an increase from the existing policyholders. And then the state insurance department commissioner and his staff are going to look at it, and they're going to decide, yeah, okay, you can do it. That means all the policyholders' prices are going to go up. So this is not an if, it's a when. It's going to go up over time. So so whatever you're paying today, this is why you want to get it as soon as possible, because you'll be paying a lower price now and it'll go up over time. And see, this is another reason why a lot of people don't want to buy it, because they say, well, I'm buying something that I might not need for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years. But that time is going to come. And so, of course, this is how the insurance company is banking the money so they can pay out for people who are already in that situation. They're already in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they need the assistance. But you're eventually going to need it. So you want to buy it earlier. And you could actually, if we did the math, I was going to do this, but I never got around to it before the show how the premiums you pay over, let's say if you paid it 12 years or 15 years, they could be wiped out. What I mean by wiped out, that money can be recouped by you in a very short period of time.
Very short
what the insurance company is going to pay out. So, because that's the risk that you're paying for. You're paying for a risk.
So let me give you two other things I discovered, and you can either correct my myths or maybe it's changed since then, because I haven't looked at it in a number of years. My dad died 10 years ago. My aunt died about 5 years ago.
Okay.
My mother died before that. So not only is it expensive, because it's not a cheap insurance, because and all this stuff. Just give us some range. I mean, if I want to get, let's say, $500,000 or $1 million, or I want to get so much a month, I'm going to get $5,000 a month just to help pay for this. What's and
But
I'm in
again, it depends on your age. So let's say if you're in your we'll get to that in a minute. Put a pin in that. So it could be as low as $300-400 a month, or it could be as high as $600-700, $800 a month. All
Right.
depends on what benefit package you pick. Remember, you got to pick elimination. The big parameters are elimination period, cost per month, and how long you're going to pay. The
Right.
insurance company is going to pay out. So
Right.
those are the widgets you get to play with in structuring your policy. And then there's other features they can put on. Like some companies will waive the elimination period if you stay home. If they know you're staying home, they say, oh, well, to encourage you to stay home and not have to go into these facilities was going to cost us more money. The elimination period will be waived if you stay home. We'll pay you right away. You don't have to wait. So that could be a rider they'll put on the policy.
So here's the other shock that came to me is I assume it's all the big carriers. It's State Farm, it's Mercury, it's all the, or I don't know, whoever. It was a bunch of little companies I never heard of, and more people, they kept telling me, we're pulling out. We're not doing this. It's such people are living longer and costs are going up. The insurance companies aren't even right. A lot of insurance companies, not all, you obviously deal with some that do, but a lot of insurance companies are getting out of this field or dropping their policies or just giving up altogether here.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this term called the silver tsunami.
Yeah.
The silver tsunami, because people are living longer. You got the baby boom generation just wiping out everything. There's so many of us, because I'm assuming maybe Dr. Trinh is a little younger, but the rest, you look like you're in the baby boom with me. So I'm at the tail end, by the way. I'm in the tail end. So that group is so large, and there's so many of them that the demand is so high for senior services. That's what's causing this
wave that's wiping out. So am I correct? Are there few carriers, and even in the state of California, and even those that do, there have been carriers that have pulled out and said, no, this is crazy. This is upside down.
Right. Well, California has a thing called the California Partnership, where if your policy is structured a certain way, I don't know, they give some sort of incentives or something like that. But before this show, I just wanted to verify. I checked. There's no companies that are selling the California partnership right now in California because I guess it's so rigid of what California is requiring of a policy to get whatever breaks they're talking about giving out. But there's companies that sell policies. But now let me tell you what has stepped into the breach. So there's other kind of policies you could buy that are structured a little different. You can actually get life insurance now that you could buy that'll pay out if a person dies. If it's a couple, it'll pay the last one to die, but it'll actually give you the same sort of benefits. They'll just accelerate the death benefit to pay for long-term care. They're specifically designed for this. So they're called hybrid policies.
Right.
Now,
And that's what I've heard about. I learned about that late. So it's an insurance policy. It's supposed to pay out when you die, and it can have a survivor's benefit for whoever's the last one to live. But it can be used. It can pay out if these things get triggered.
Right.
You can't do these ADLs. Um, but I thought the couple I looked at they wanted it all in one lump sum.
No,
It
you can pay per month. And now here's the catch. They're usually more expensive than the regular long-term care policy, but the price won't go up. So that's the trade-off. You say, okay, I'll pay a little bit more upfront, but I know what I'm going to pay. I can budget because I know this is not going to change. But that also means, that benefit's going to stay the same, which may deteriorate over time because maybe it's $9,000 a month today, but by the time you use it, you might need $11,000-12,000 a month. So I tell people, okay, well, you got to hope that maybe your Social Security benefit will cover the gap for you, but at least you'll have some benefit that'll pay out in case you need these services. But those policies are very good policies, and there's a couple of companies that sell them. The other thing that stepped into the breach is if you have a regular life insurance policy just with an accelerated death benefit on it, or the same acceleration for what they call chronic illness here in California. So the triggers for chronic illness riders on life insurance policies are the same as for long-term care. And they'll pay you, so much a month if you show that you're in that situation where you have the ADL qualification, and they'll pay out over 3-4 years, but they're limited. They only pay for like 3 or 4 years, and then the policy is going to be paid down so far there's not going to be any more money left.
So what you're telling me is that in today, this is for those who listen to the future, this is 2023, fall of 2023. You're telling me as of today, there's nobody writing traditional long-term health care insurance. I can't get long-term.
No, you can. Yeah, you can. It's just the California partnership. You have to go look it up on their website. They have a certain way a policy needs to be structured for this partnership with California. So I don't know that much about it. I had to learn about it just to sell long-term care, but there's no companies that are selling it. They had a list, but as of this date, nobody's selling that program. So you can still get insurance. There's companies that are selling it. It's just not according to those qualifications, that structure.
But there aren't a lot.
You can still get it.
Am I
there's
correct?
not a lot. There's
not a lot. And then the alternative is to get some sort of hybrid life insurance policy that will pay out not just a death benefit, but a monthly or a payment.
Yeah, they'll pay a monthly long-term care benefit once the ADLs are triggered. And the good thing about those, they build up cash value. So if you don't use it, you could cash it in, and get some of your money back if you wanted to.
And what are we talking about? Give me some range of what that might look at or cost, because that's.
Well, just add 20% to whatever the regular long-term care price is. So let's say I'll give you an example. I just did a quote for someone. They were paying $400 a month for a long-term care policy. They're in their early 60s. And they only wanted to pay out for 4 years, but for the life insurance, it was going to cost $600 a month. So it's more, but the price is not going to go up because it's a life insurance policy. It's fixed, right? And also, if you can't make payments, there's cash in there that maybe it'll tide you over in case you have a problem with your cash flow where the policy is not going to lapse right away if you don't make a payment till you can pick it back up. But with a health insurance program, you got to pay them every month, regardless. If you miss a payment, the policy could lapse. Now, there's riders you could put on that to help you with that situation as well. So that's why how it's structured, that's where I come in as an agent. I help you structure the plan, explain all the different nuances, and then help you structure it where you have a cost-benefit analysis you're making that helps you pick the policy that's best for you.
Now, last question, and then I'll let Dr. Trinh back in because I went through all these details. And I'm just trying to see what's changed in the years. I'm in my mid 60s. I was told, it's too late, buddy. You should have done this 10 years ago. So I do not have anything like this. Is there anything, and I can't pay thousands of dollars a month for this type of thing. Is it, to Dr. Trin's point that he started, by the time we think about it, it's too late. Is it too late for me in my mid 60s?
Well, no, I don't think it's too late. You just might have to get a policy that's not priced up to the max. So you get what you can afford, and then you hope your Social Security will cover the difference, right? So that's what I tell people. Look at what your Social Security check is going to be, and then add that to whatever long-term care policy benefit you buy, and see if that'll get you in the range of what it would take to take care of you. And then hope maybe you got some family members that'll cover the gap, right? That sort of thing. So, or get the life insurance program that'll pay for these benefits and see if that'll work. I mean, you have to do something to try to prepare for this, like you said. But you're at the probably the last vestiges of affordability if you're in your mid 60s. For
Right.
most people, there's people who got a lot of money, they can do it.
Sure.
They self-insure, right? Even with those people, though, they might want to buy an annuity with long-term care benefits, put a lump sum in there, and the annuity has certain riders and things on it that'll increase their payout if they're in a long-term care situation. So but those are people with assets. So
Right.
even people with assets, like you said, they need this program because they could be burned through. My first actual client was just like you described earlier. He has a mother with significant assets, and he had to move her into his home, and he's using her assets to take care of her because she needs 24-hour care. He's got to go to work every day. He's a
Right.
doctor with the school district, and he's burning through his inheritance. He's seen his inheritance get burned through based on the money he's using from her assets to take care of her.
There used to be one more question. There used to be places I saw a couple. I don't know if they're still around, but we looked at it once, and my mom it was clear she was getting Parkinson's, getting dementia. This is 20 years ago, and my dad, being the planner, started to look around, and there were some facilities you could buy in. They'd say, and it wasn't cheap. It was a couple $100,000 or $500,000 or something here. But they'd roll the dice, and you bought a slot in that facility, and if you needed it, they'd take care of you. And if the money ran out, I mean, you lived longer than they expected, that was their loss. But a lot of these facilities too. The other shock we had is, let's say that it costs 10,000 a month, or 7,000, or 8,000 a month for care. You run out of money, they show you the door. You have to leave.
Yeah.
You're like 90 and nobody around, and they literally kick you out. Right? They don't just say, well, okay, we'll eat it and we'll pay for it. You go.
Yeah.
That
Can you
seems
imagine being homeless as a senior?
90 after you burned through hundreds of thousands of dollars you gave up your house and everything you'd saved, and maybe this policy only paid for 4 years, and lucky you lived to be need help for another couple years. You can run out of money, and what happens when you do? You got to go.
Which is why what you're doing today is so important, because
Ah,
you're trying to make people aware. Well, I got a talking point here. This is from a company that I do business with. They say theme number one: nobody wants to talk about this.
nobody.
They say in some ways, a long-term care plan is like maintaining a healthy diet. Everyone agrees it's important, but many of us don't take the necessary
That's the
action.
truth.
In fact, 36% of people feel the topic is too difficult to talk about with their family, and 32% admit they don't know where to start.
All of that. And the third thing was, Dr. Trin said, you wait until it's too late. The doctor says, mom can't stay home anymore here. It's pretty clear you've been doing this for a year or two. She's fallen, she's scared, she's deteriorating. She's got to go somewhere. And so your assumption is, well, okay, she's got some assets, maybe I got a little money. The government must have some programs. And you start to realize, oh my God, I don't have enough money. Nobody has enough money to do this thing here. Why does nobody talk about this stuff? Why do Dr. Trinh, I will bring you back in. I'm going to beat up the medical profession. You see the patient deteriorating. They're developing Alzheimer's. Why isn't that the first topic you bring up to somebody? Hey, are you prepared? If not, talk to Cedric. Talk to somebody. Here's a list of providers here you can go talk to.
Doctors themselves don't know anything about long-term care insurance to have the discussion. So
They
that's
just know that you need it. But
And
they
yet,
know it's needed. They don't know anything else other than that.
And
Yeah.
yet they were the ones telling me, ordering me in my aunt's case, you better do something, buddy. They take me aside and I've said, what? And they would just shrug and say, I don't know, figure it out. And I'm like, well, you're supposed to be the guy advising us. You're the one telling us about the medical condition here. And I know you're not a financial planner, but they didn't even direct me anywhere. They didn't say, well, here's 4 places you can go talk to. Here's this center for something. Here's the paper from the government. Here's people like Cedric. They didn't have a list. They didn't have anywhere to start. And nor did they point this out until it's at the end. And nobody's having this discussion. I get that. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to do it. But when you do start to think about it, I didn't have anywhere to go. I never felt so alone. I didn't know anybody to talk to about this stuff here. Everybody just shrugged.
Another reason people don't want to talk about it is it's like, why do people whistle when they walk through a graveyard?
Yeah, right.
They're afraid. So most people are hoping, well, maybe it's never going to happen to me. But one of the stats, I went to a presentation with a company not too long ago that really hit me, was that 70% of the people who hit age 65, once they hit 65, there's a 70% chance they're going to need long-term care at that point. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm getting closer to that age. You mean at some point, that's 2/3 of the time. That's 70% chance you're going to need something before you die. And here's what really gets me is the pressure it puts families under, because imagine you're just getting to the point where you've gotten your kids through college and all that cost and expense and pressure. And now you've gotten them out of the house. And now all of a sudden you got a parent that needs some help. And now you got to start thinking about helping them, and you got to prepare for yourself at the same time.
Yes.
So that's why a lot of people just ignore this, because it's like it's too many other things they have to deal with. Their children, their parents,
and there's only so much money we have. This assumption we'll just go find it. I don't know where people go find another $1,000 a month or $500 or $700 a month or something. Some can, but most of us, everything else is going up left and right and center. So I don't know. In the mix of this, you start putting off what you don't have to do. So what kind of crisis are we looking at, Dr. Trinh? The average age is what, 80 now people live to? 75, 80, something like that?
Yeah, high 70s. The average age actually going down, which is kind of scary.
I did see that, yeah.
Was that based on the pandemic?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
And also other factors, bad diets, stress, drugs, suicide, all these other things that are leading people to not, that all adds up into a lump sum that it's going down. But I say to my friends all the time, hey, we've made it this far. The good news is I'm probably going to live to see 90. The bad news is I'm probably going to live to see 90. I don't know how I'm going to pay for things at 90 and 95. What's it going to cost at 90 and 95 in 20 years, 30 years from now?
My mom lived till she was 99.
99. See, there.
Wow.
And most of that time she was in relatively good health, most of the time. But, she had a different diet than what we have today. She exercised, she was a health food nut and all that sort of thing. So her longevity could be explained. And, but, if you have a good doctor, Dr. Trinh could probably speak to this. Most doctors now, if you have a good practitioner, they're working with preventative care more than they are trying to cure what happened to you. They're trying to make sure it doesn't happen to you. Because I kept wondering why my doctors sending me to all these specialists. I'm like, well, why do you want me to go see this person? Just go see the urologist, go see the eye doctor. She's trying to hit stuff off at the past before it happens, right? And now I can appreciate. At first I complained, but now I appreciate it, because I'm like, okay, they found things that I wouldn't have known about otherwise,
right?
That I could correct. before it gets to that point. But then
So
that
what
adds to the
happens when the
longevity.
silver tsunami crashes, when the wave finally hits the beach, and the baby boomers, up until our children, the biggest generation, the Gen X's are even going to, or the millennials are even a bigger generation because they're our kids. So we all had kids, and now that's going to be an equal or bigger generation. But right now, the baby boomers are cresting, and they're starting. I forgot how many are turning 65 every day, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the. I wasn't the first leading edge. I'm kind of the middle or the early part of the pack here. Um, what happens, Dr. Trin, when these millions of people suddenly need health care and they can't afford it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because we have a shortage of physicians. Um,
Shortage of physicians, shortage of facilities,
so
rising costs for all of them. An industry that, if this one guy is telling me the
yeah,
truth, is not really aimed at middle America or everyday America. They're looking to make money on the affluent Americans, and they're the people that can pay 10 grand a month or more. And so the rest of us, average folks, what, your kids are going to take care of us? That's
yeah,
the answer.
the answer is to call Cedric and get long-term care insurance.
Really? I mean,
That's
I
why he's on here. That's why I'm promoting him because not many people think about this until it's too late.
how
And
many
Well, and then the
people have?
government eventually is going to step in. They're actually, let me give you the handwriting on the wall.
Okay,
The
please. Yeah.
handwriting on the wall is eventually states are going to make it mandatory that you have a policy of some minimal value.
You think so? You think we'll get to that point where
No, we're there, not in California, but we're there already because there's a state that because of I'm on a radio show and I don't know who's going to hear this, so I'm not going to. I'm not, and I have a license to protect. I can't say too much about it, but there's a state not too far from us that actually made it a requirement, and because they did, one of the companies I was doing business with told us they got as many applications in a day as they usually get in a year, and they just tied up their whole system. So they
Wow.
weren't used to getting that many applications to process in that short a period of time, and they just locked up everything for a while. So because the state made it, put it in the law, and make it a requirement. Now that's not in California. Let me reiterate that yet, but the handwriting on the wall is states as they look at the cost and they see the tsunami that we're in, they're going to just start making it a requirement. So that adds something else now you have to pay for that you didn't expect to pay for.
Like, you have to have health insurance, and the government will give you some subsidy, whatever. But enough of this. Everybody's uninsured. You have to have car insurance. I'm sorry, you don't want to have car insurance, but we can't let everybody drive around without car insurance. So we're going to force people, and maybe there's some sort of supplements or assistance or other sorts of things you get at certain levels. But that's an interesting
So
thought.
they're going
I
to make
mean,
it a requirement to have this too eventually. So that's one of the things that the government is going to do in hindsight because they're always behind the curve.
right.
And they should change some of these laws and so on. So, but eventually all this is going to cause taxes to go up on everybody else. You don't know how it's going to affect the echo boomers and the Gen X's and all the Gen Z's. They're
Right.
they're going to end up paying more income tax to pay for a lot of the things that we're going to need in the future. It's just eventual. It's an eventuality, I think.
And the cost of healthcare. Why does the cost of healthcare keep going through the roof, Dr. Trin? Is it? I can't wrap my head around thousands of dollars, $100,000 for a drug treatment. Like, what's the one that's come out for Parkinson's or for Alzheimer's?
yeah, it's pretty crazy because obviously we have more technology than other countries with healthcare, and the cost of those technologies are also very high. The problem is we have lots of gadgets and widgets and different things, but our health outcome isn't necessarily better than another country's health
That's what I
outcome.
keep reading. After all the money, after all the sci-fi stuff
Yeah.
we got, and we're not necessarily living better or
We
longer.
spend a lot more money in tests and procedures and process, but are we getting better care? That's a good question. Are we extending the lives of Americans longer than another country who spends less healthcare on their folks? What about our infant death rate?
Yeah.
What about what about Alzheimer's and cancers? And it's interesting because there are countries who spend a fraction of their dollars on healthcare and probably have better results in the end.
Mhm.
So that's a big discussion to have. We pay for procedures. We don't necessarily pay for outcome.
Yeah. Well, it's pay per service. We pay to do
Their
something.
service. Yeah, and that's a broken machine in my opinion.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I don't know what the other machine is. We, we've said, um, uh, government, socialized medicine, where the majority pay, basic healthcare coverage, like they do in Canada and Europe and some other places. That seems to be there's a strong resistance to doing that here. I don't know if that's a better result or you just get a more bureaucratized system that takes longer to get decisions made and but at least there's a net level there. All of that's part of this bigger problem because somebody else told me, maybe it was you, Dr. Trin, that if you looked at my life as a whole, if you go backwards, someday I'll die, and you're going to go look at how much did he spend on medical care over the course of his life? Like 90% of it is in the last 10, 12 years or something. It's all backloaded. I didn't spend that much. I don't go see a doctor that much. I didn't have much happen to me until the end when suddenly everything's going wrong and I need lots of health care. I need lots of stuff here. So it's all backloaded. It's not evenly spaced out over my life. Is that true? It seems like it.
Most of it's in the last year.
In the last year. I
Mhm.
remember when my late mother
Yeah.
died. Now she was well insured, so this we didn't have to come out of our pocket, but we saw the bill. The
Yeah.
last time she went into the hospital, Parkinson's dementia. Now she's weak and she fell all the time. And she got like pneumonia and everything. Her body's just falling apart and everything. And they put her in at the hospital and quickly put her into ICU for a week. The
Right.
bill to die was like $1 million.
Yep.
What?
Not uncommon. Oh yeah.
To die. I mean, there was no hope she's coming out alive here. But just that last week of services, maybe the last 2 weeks or so of services needed, she spent like $1 million. Now the insurance companies picked it up, and she had a couple different carriers and Medicare. She had a job, and then my dad had her covered under his job, and then his Medicare. So she went down and had three. What they paid some and the other one paid some and everybody took care of it. My dad was pleased but he was pleased that they paid for it. I was shocked that and this was 13, 15 years ago.
And my guess is she probably never wanted to be in the ICU.
No. Oh no. Towards the end,
Yeah,
she was just like, let me go.
right.
Well, near the end with my mom, she actually had to go into hospice. And hospice is more death with dignity.
Yes,
At least
exactly.
they just make it. They explained it to me how it worked, and once a person goes in the hospice, they don't really tarry that long. They're there
No.
for a shorter period of time. But this is one thing I'll say about. I did want to comment about what you said about our medical system. It does need to be changed. People say they don't like socialized medicine, but unfortunately, the love of money is the root of all kind of evil. So because there's so much profit that companies are looking for, whether it be drug companies or whatever, insurance companies, whatever, it's hard to make institutional change.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
people in America are so smart, however, if you just unleash them and say, look, go look at socialized medicine in England, Canada, and find out how we can do it better here.
Right.
I think that would be more empowering because our system is not working. So
Right.
let's take their system and let's look at all the arguments against it. And let's figure out, okay, if that's your argument against it, how should we do it here where it'll be affordable for everybody and the system will work better? Because we're the United States, we're the biggest and the best. Okay, well, put
Right.
that biggest and the best to work. And let's see but the resistance is the people who are making profit don't want to do that.
Mm-mm.
So you got to have somebody who's strong enough politically or whatever to actually overcome those forces and make it a reality.
Right.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen in our lifetime, but I think it's going to happen eventually.
And there's, I always just say to people in healthcare in general, there's only three people that can pay for it. Either the government pays for it. Well, that's socialized medicine, and taxes go up, and or they don't run things well. It's too big a program. All the thousands of arguments don't want that. So then your employer pays it, and more employers are saying, "I ain't paying for this. I can't afford it." My aunt's case was a perfect case. She retired as a secretary, and she got a pension back in those days from a big company she worked for, an insurance company she worked for, and she lived longer than she worked. She worked for 40 years. She started when she was 18. She almost, I think she lived into her 90s. So she it was about the same. So she worked for this company for 40 years, and then she was retired, and they paid her for 40 years. And you look at the math on that, that's no big shock. I said to her, your generation killed this. Nobody's getting pensions anymore because they realize they're not going to pay out for 40 years. You only worked for us for 30 years and we're going to pay out for 40 years? Heck no. That's
Well,
why they
most companies don't even have pensions anymore.
don't even do it anymore. It will match you. You do it, but it's on you. Or, so it's either the government, your employer, or you. And that's where this is all shifting back to. And on long term care, I don't think any of us, I certainly wasn't, are ready for the shock, the cost, much less I don't want to do it.
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom line. My aunt didn't want to do it. My dad didn't want to do it. My mom didn't want to do it, even though they all needed it and eventually were forced to do it. This wasn't something that they welcomed or wanted. And on top of that, the financial burden was enormous, enormous. And there was nobody, because we didn't have a Cedric in our life, none of us had any kind of insurance to help cover that. So if the burden is falling to us, which is where everybody's pushing it, amen. Get early. Don't be me. Don't wait too late and all this other stuff here. Get early. Call Cedric. How do they reach you, Cedric?
I can be reached at 424-209-7411. I have a website called futurefinancialconcepts.com as well. So it's 424-209-7411. I live in Torrance. I work out of home most of the time. I do most of my appointments here on Zoom, or I do make house calls. Because of the pandemic, offices went by the wayside, so I just left it like this. But I can reach more people this way. People are more comfortable actually doing Zoom meetings these days, in the comfort of their own home. So that's the way I can be reached, and I'll look at the situation and I'll try to put you something together that will work for you based on, again,
Can you give Dr. Trin's friends and family here a little incentive? Is there a free consultation, or do I have to start paying for you the minute I call you up here?
Of course, all consultations are free, of course. So because I'm trying to run what we call a holistic practice these days. So that means I have to deal with, because I'm also in the ministry. I'm also a minister, so I have to deal with people's emotions a lot of the time. That this is an emotional situation. You got to deal with all of their past. They have to deal with a parent themselves, that they bring in a certain person into their home that's in their family they had to take care of. I have one client, her whole life was changed because father told her, "Hey, come get your mom. I can't take care of her anymore."
Yeah.
And she's a high income executive doing very well. All of a sudden, the mother been living with her for the last couple of years. And so she can only go to work one or 2 days a week. And otherwise she has to telecommute because she has to get a caregiver to be with her mom all day. And she didn't expect this. So this just totally changed her life. Right. So she loves her mom. She wants to take care of her. She's doing a great job, but everything shifted at that point unexpectedly.
Right.
So, and that can happen more and more. So you want to you have to have some empathy for people. That's what I want to say. And I can have it because I went through it, right? You have to have patience with people. It's not a high pressure kind of sales thing at all, because they need it. You just need to be persistent in a way that they won't be offended, but you got to let them know, hey, you need to get this done. So however long it takes me to follow up with you to do it, I'll do it. And then just let the chips fall wherever they're going to fall.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. If I haven't stressed it enough, I've seen it in my own life, and here I am heading into the abyss, and I got no plan. I got no protection. I got a house my daughter will liquidate someday, maybe to pay for me. That's it. and I don't know if that's enough. And all I can hope is, that I live a healthy life for as long as I can, and whatever time is needed will be short.
Well, let's just send this message to the assembly and to the governor. This was the first time, because we just had the census, right? This is the first time we had a net decrease in the population in California. Because a lot of people are just, I know a lot of people who had great pensions, they had great jobs, but they sold their houses and left.
Right.
Because they wanted a higher standard of living or keep the standard of living they had. And they know it wasn't going to happen here with the retirement that they had. So they
I
sold their
agree.
homes and
I've
headed
thought of it
someplace else.
someday. I'm not looking to close OC Talk Radio, but someday, God forbid, I may have to and just move somewhere or go somewhere just to make the money last longer, or to get more bang for your buck. I don't know. It's a scary topic, and I think this is. I don't know why it's not on the news more. I think
Yep.
it will be as the big tsunami crests, and there's more and more people just saying, I got no money, and who's going to take care of me here? And everybody's going to be shocked, and there'll be horror stories of people living homeless and everything that were executives before or something here, just because they got eaten up by a health crisis. I don't know.
Well, we appreciate your courage, Paul, for at least doing this show.
I appreciate you coming forward. All right, give us one more time. How do they get in touch with you?
I can be reached at 424-209-7411. And I'm also on social media at Future Financial Concepts on Instagram and on Future Financial Concepts.
Dr. Trinh, you got to bring him back, because when I could talk for another hour about it. He's also a minister, and he helps counsel people through this stuff here. Usually they're just
that's by
capitalist.
default. That's by default because
Are you at a particular church? Are you at a particular church? Or
yeah, I'm at Faithful Central Bible Church in Inglewood. I'm just one of the we call it the non-paid staff. That's what they call it.
Oh,
But I'll be
wow.
doing baptisms on Sunday.
I love it.
Right. So we have a great new young pastor there, Pastor John Paul Foster. He's a bilingual graduate from here in Southern California.
Because we're talking about all the money part of it. That's where I wanted to go, because I was just shocked and angry and unprepared for the money. Who's going to pay? How much it costs? Where do you get it? All that stuff here, and that's what you're talking about. Well, you can cover some or all of that money by insuring yourself against this loss.
Right. And if you can't afford what it costs, just get something. So you have something to work with. Maybe you could pull in some other assets, but this is a chip or a card you can put on the table, and then try to get the other money from someplace else if you can.
But I think there's a whole nother topic about the reluctance. Once you get past just the money, it is a topic nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to think about, and nobody wants to budget for here.
Right.
It's never going to
You don't use it for, like I said, you buy it now, but you might not use it for a decade. Who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
And just like with life insurance, you're going to die sooner or later, but nobody wants to buy it. But when the person dies, everybody's looking for where's their policy.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right. Thanks, Dr. Trinh. Take us out. Very, very powerful topic that needs to be broached and talked about more here. Bring Cedric back some more here.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on today.
Well, I appreciate you.
And learning a lot about long-term care and the need to have this discussion now and not later when you need it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So thanks so much.
Well, there you have it. One more reason to tune in each and every time to Health Talks with Dr. Trinh. Looking ahead at how we're going to stay healthy and be healthy and live a healthy life well into old age. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio. Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Field Applied Innovation Center.
So you're at Irvine? Uh-oh.